Hello, Hunter. It's a pleasure to be here. So Maca is my name, Macarena. My pronouns are she, her, ella in Spanish, and I'm really happy to join you today. I'm doing good.
Good. So, Maka, a little bit before we jump into the questions here, I'd love to hear a little bit about your career journey and why this topic is a passion for you.
Of course, sure. So, I was born and raised, and I live in Argentina, Latin America, southern part of the cone. For 6 years or more now, I've been working in global environments, but I started my career in local companies. So I have the two experiences. And My role right now is HR manager at PowerToFly. But first, I was especially working in recruiting and talent acquisition for Power2Fly, which is for the ones who don't know the settings of the company. We are a global startup. So startup, fast-paced environment. And before that, I worked in a huge corporation, Accenture, for the UK and Italian market, so European market as well. So I have, the entire experience of sourcing for local talent and working for international clients as well in big and small companies. And that's what I've been doing for the past 6 years.
I love that. Yeah, it's quite a transition going from such a big company like Accenture, I imagine, to our small but mighty team here at Power to Fly.
It is, but it's been a great journey.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a gift to have you on the team and great to be a part of it with you. So let's jump in. How can Latinx professionals in Latin America best translate the skills they've gained from local organizations into assets for these international companies?
Sure. So let me start with something that's very basic, but sometimes we forget. All experiences are valuable. So as a recruiter, I have, on a daily basis, the opportunity to interview and source many candidates who only had experiences in local companies so far. And as I mentioned before, I myself started my career in a local company before transitioning to global organizations. And the thing is that while every company and every country has its own way of working, culture, in today's more and more globalized world, the skills needed in the different industries are transferable and are comparable across countries. So that's to answer your question. My first advice is that in your local experience, identify the key skills that you developed in your work, the results that you have achieved, and try to generalize and abstract them to present the skills as ones you already possess and you can apply to new context, new global context in this case.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I think it's a common pitfall that I know I suffered from as well to forget how many skills I have that I take for granted that I've done elsewhere that they just come second nature to me. So I'm like, oh, well, everybody can do that. It's like, no, no, no. Your life experience is unique. You are the only person that has all of these skills in this order, in this arrangement. And that's very valuable.
Absolutely. And one other thing that I think that it's very particular of LATAM talent, or maybe in a more general way of talent that works for global environments outside their own uh, countries, is adaptability. That's something that we all have and that we all feel that it's not valuable, but it's a huge strain. So LATAM professionals are, in our case, we're very much used to navigating complex environments, having limited resources, trying to find innovative solutions to complex problems, again, with sometimes limited resources. And this resilience is a tremendous asset in global organizations, and especially in startups that operate in
Mm.
fast-paced and continually changing markets. So this is something very important that we take for granted sometimes, but we shouldn't, and we should definitely highlight during the interview process.
Yeah, startups is a great example of you have to wear many hats all the time, right? You might be doing three jobs as opposed to one job. And with experiences like you've been sharing, that's a perfect fit for a lot of people.
Absolutely. So, and also working on continually improving processes, not having, everything set up as you might find in big corporations or 100-year organizations. So, this is a reality that, at least in my case and in my experience with LATAM talent, we face on a daily basis. And I think it is very important. Another advice that I have is that during the interview process, you should also highlight, the alignment between your local market knowledge and how this could offer a fresh perspective and a fresh strategy for global companies, not only for the ones that are looking to grow or expand in a specific region, but also in general. Show You need to show what you did, sorry, what you worked for in your local context, and how could this perspective or this way of thinking could help the company's goals in general.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, when it comes to learning English for a global job, what level of fluency is typically expected? And how would you suggest candidates bridge any language gaps during the hiring process?
Okay, so this is my sweet spot because I come from what I studied at university is teaching languages, Spanish, Italian. I'm a translator as well, so I come from language teaching background, and
You
I
must be the
always like to.
best friend to travel with because everyone could
I
just turn to you and you can get us anywhere.
Absolutely. I also translate from classic Latin, but that is not that helpful in
Sure.
traveling. Just
But it
if you are
helps you
in the Roman
understand every other
Empire.
language. Yeah, because it always goes back. A lot of it goes back to Latin, depending on which country you're in.
It is true. But anyway, coming back from that background, I always like to remind people that languages are communication tools. This might sound, again, like obvious, but it's not. And what we do with tools is that we use language as a tool in different contexts to achieve specific results. So, to answer your question, it actually depends on the role that you're applying for. It's not the same level of fluency that you will be required for a technical or IT role than the one that is expected for a client-facing role, for example, or a content generation role. Sorry. That is one thing that I would highlight. The other thing is another factor to consider is the seniority of the role. So if your
Mm,
role, for example, involves managing people, having one-on-ones with your direct reports, handling difficult conversations, a higher level of fluency and confidence in the language as a tool is expected. On the other hand, if your responsibilities are more technical, such as programming or just achieving your own personal individual contributor results, your English usage would be different. So going back to thinking of language as a communication tool, uh, another thing that I always like to highlight to candidates and to everyone, basically to students as well, is that like any tool, we can use language with more or less skills, but still reach acceptable results. So what
mm,
does this mean? It means that as a recruiter, when interviewing candidates, my key expectation is the ability to answer a question. But
mm,
then the complexity of that answer can change. But first, I think that the first goal as a native English speaker when you're interviewing is to understand the question. Make sure you understood the question. Then you think about how to respond. And my advice, if you're not feeling super confident in your English level, is to keep it simple and to the point. So basically, less is more. Let the recruiter know that you understood the question Answer with the core of what you want to say, and then add more information depending on your communicative abilities or skills. And one other thing, very important, sometimes we're in the middle of the interview, we're nervous, we're not feeling confident about how we will answer the questions in English. And sometimes you don't understand the question, or you're not sure what the interviewer tried to say. So if you didn't, due to the nerves, you can ask for it to be repeated. That's not a problem. Could you repeat the question? Or I'm not sure I understood what you said. Could you rephrase it? That's completely fine. And one last thing I like to add is that sometimes we forget that English also has many different variations. So, depending on the region, let's say the United States, you know for sure that it's not the same speaking with someone from New York, that's someone from the South, that's someone from the North. Then we have other English speakers, European English speakers, Australian. Then we have non-native English speakers that have their own different accents. A Latin American accent in English is not the same as an Indian accent in English. So all of this can interfere in the basic understanding of a question. And that's not necessarily a problem. You just need to ask the question to be repeated.
Such helpful advice. I English is my first language, and I'm often confused. I have to ask questions all the time. It's very confusing. People are confusing.
People are confusing. That's another factor for sure. One last tip that I don't want to forget to
Yeah.
mention is AI. So nowadays we have like a huge variety of tools and AI usage and great practice platforms for interviews, both written and oral. So you can practice. Practice is key.
Mm.
For example, I recently tried a tool called Udly. I can write it down in the chat. That is basically an AI-powered interview practice tool. And I think it's interesting to explore these or any other tools that can help you to practice and feel more confident in your interview process.
I love that. And you can also now adapting language that you've written into other languages is better than it's ever been.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what are some other effective ways to build confidence when communicating in this second language, especially if you haven't used it in a professional way? Would you say that practice is one of the key components? Is there anything else?
Definitely, practice is always very useful. But then again, sometimes when you're applying to different roles, you might be applying to roles in your country, local roles, international roles, so you might not always have the time to practice in advance. I definitely advise practice as a key tool. But when you get to that interview with the recruiter, uh, another advice or another effective way to build confidence when communicating in this case in English, if you haven't used it before professionally, or if it's a bit rusty because you studied it at school or at college, but you didn't have the chance to put it in practice lately, what I usually advise is to express, during the interview process to the recruiter that you're really excited about the opportunity, but that you're a little nervous because you haven't used the language professionally in a while, but you have, however, been learning on your own, prioritizing your own personal goal of advancing in your language skills. So this is, for me, this helps me relax as a candidate, and I think that it also lowers, the expectations of but in a good way, not in a bad way,
Yeah.
of the interviewer. So, of course, recruiters should know that candidates might be nervous, usually, when they when they speak in an interview, especially in the first rounds. but it's always useful just to, to be transparent, to communicate, and to share this information.
I love that tip. I like to call that level setting when I come into a meeting because sometimes maybe I'm nervous, maybe I'm a little tired, whatever it is, it's an act of vulnerability. And then we're instantly connected because I've shared something personal with them. And they're like, oh, that's great. Thank you for letting me know. And now let's continue. And that, whether it's about a language barrier or maybe something going on, if you can describe it on a high level, I find that always relaxes me quite a bit.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
And I think that, especially nowadays, human interaction and making interviews and making the candidate experience more human, more diverse, that also helps from a recruiter perspective to bring more engaged candidate and a more engaged new hire to your company. So it's always good to settle expectations and to create more human, more real interactions with your
Mm.
talent.
Yeah, because we have these fleeting moments on screens as opposed to, in in-person days, you'd come in, you'd sit down, you'd relax into it a little bit and have that time, but we don't really have that time with the other person now. So it's about making that time in these 15-minute windows. It's not an easy thing to do instinctively, but I think once we're given permission, like you're saying, with these tools to know that this is okay, this is actually good for the interview, this isn't a sign of weakness, this is a sign that I am confident in my own level and willing to share this with someone. And that can create these connections in these finite windows that we are strapped into with these Zoom meetings.
Absolutely, I agree. And I don't know, this is very it's a very popular meme. I don't know if you ever saw it, the one about Sofia Vergara in Modern Family saying, "Do you know how smart I am in Spanish?" Have you ever seen that one?
I haven't
Um,
seen that. I love that.
but I mean, the whole thing is about she not using the right terms.
Right.
Um, so maybe saying, I think she said something like, do you know what it is to talk in my shoes instead of walking in my shoes? And they laughed at
Mm,
her, and she answered, do you even know how smart I am in Spanish? And I
yeah.
think that it's funny because it's true. Sometimes
Yeah.
we want to say something that we feel very confident in our own language, but then
Yeah.
when we put it in English, it doesn't come across the way that we hoped it did. But I have something to say about that. I'm not 100%, how smart the way this your level of intelligence or being smart is, it doesn't change from a language to the other one. You are smart, your skills are still the same. It's just finding the right way or the best way within the own level of fluency that you have to express what you want to say. So
Yeah.
you're not less smart in Spanish than in English.
Right. We can feel less smart. Feelings are information, but they're not facts.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what cultural or communication challenges would you say Latinx professionals commonly face when transitioning to this global work environment, and how are other ways they can overcome them?
Okay, so I think not for Latinx only, but when we work with global talent in general, there are a few cultural challenges in general that we might come across with. The first group, I would call them cultural challenges. So, very first one is the perception of your identity, and in this case, the perception of being a Latinx. So, Latinx professionals might face stereotypes or misunderstandings about their cultural background or about who they are and what they can do with where they come from. In some environments, actually, their identity might be seen as an obstacle rather than a strength. And as I said, the adaptability that we take for granted because we have all this cultural and language background from our local countries, plus the one that we learn for the US companies that we work with or the international companies that we work with, which is a very, interesting and complex skill set. That identity and those skills might be seen as an obstacle. So myself, I unfortunately face situations where my peers, local peers that worked in Italy in teams in Italy, in the UK, or even in the US for other clients, thought that I was less intelligent, sorry, or that I lacked intelligence because I came from a Latin American country, or just due to the fact of having an accent that was different from what they thought it was their neutral English or Italian or French accent, just by the way I spoke. And that led to them believing that I had a lower level of understanding of situations, of professional things. Basically, that is unfortunately a stereotype. And that reflects also the lack of the level of engagement with diversity and inclusion that companies have, because we can only reach to a certain point individually. I can definitely talk to my peers, let them know about my identity, about what I think, the way I express, and be super clear with everything. But then there's another big part that must come from the organizations to support your diverse talent. So, and
Mm,
that is one of the most important reasons why uh, DIB focus is key to today's, talent attraction, acquisition, and retention in organizations.
yeah, yeah. More important than ever.
More important than ever. So I would say that that is the first challenge that I face personally: underestimation. When, as a matter of fact, as I said, just having the ability of switching between languages and switching between communication contexts is a huge strength that
Yeah.
your coworkers, your local coworkers, might not necessarily have. This is adaptability. Again, some things that we consider obvious are not obvious. For example, LATAM talent, we have a lot of knowledge about our own countries, about our own language, about our own culture. But at the same time, when we work in English, we need to have that same understanding, but for the US, for the UK, for Europe. So maybe your local, your American coworkers, your European coworkers don't know the same about your country that what you know about theirs. That's a big strain there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're going to be interacting with other people that might speak your native language. So then you have that ability that some of your local coworkers also don't have.
Of course. And that is, for example, if your company wants to expand, or if you're working in a client facing role and you want to close a deal with a client from another region, that's also a very, very, very important skill to have, speaking different languages. Then
Yeah.
I think that other cultural challenges outside the lack of diversity, of common misconceptions about identity, come from understanding that different cultures have different work cultures. So what does this
Mm,
mean? This actually means that, for example, maybe in Latin America, we might work with different workplace norms. The expectations around hierarchy, authority, the way we communicate with higher levels or peers might be different. um, in some Latin America, and also internally inside Latin America, we don't talk the same in with our bosses in Argentina, where I'm from, that the way that they do in Colombia, for example. In other countries, there's more of a formality in the way you communicate and a deference to authority, Whereas in global work environments, and maybe in my experience with with US colleagues, there's more of a direct communication style. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to change entirely the way that you communicate, just to be an active listener and just to be aware that things in your new workplace might not be the same or might not be communicated the same way as they did in your local company. And just be open
Yeah.
to learning and asking. So clear
Mm.
communication for me is key. When you don't know something or when you're not sure about the way to ask for something, just go ahead and ask. Ask your manager, ask a colleague, ask a mentor. I think that is definitely something that could rise when joining an international company for the first time.
Yeah. Great
And
advice.
sorry,
Oh
didn't
no,
mean to
you go
interrupt.
ahead. Yeah, no, I was jumping in. You're good.
Great. No, and I think another important thing is that well, basics, work-life balance. So that is important in many Latin American cultures. The approach to time management and work-life balance might be different from global organizations, US organizations. And again, this doesn't mean that you need to change entirely the way that you work or the way that you live, just to communicate clearly and understand expectations on the other side clearly.
Yep, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious. We just have a couple minutes left. Have there been any lost in translation moments in your professional settings in your life, and how did you navigate through those, Maca?
Well, for me, to be honest, I think that phrasal verbs and humor, those are the ones. I can't think of any examples, but I must have like tons of situations where I used the incorrect phrasal verb, and I was very sure I was saying something, but then I was, because I changed the preposition, I was saying a completely different thing. And then humor. In my case, I like to make jokes all the time, but I learned that my type of humor, which is for me neutral, when I'm around with other Latin American peers, might not be taken the same way for other countries or other cultures. So just to be respectful and
Mm,
be very aware of, non let me yeah of facial and body language when you're saying something and you feel like they might not have understood it fully, or that you said something that made someone feel uncomfortable. Be aware of body language. That also gives you a clear hint of what's going on.
yeah. What is your type of humor, if you could describe your type of humor, Maca?
I'm very ironic, like all the way to even I, I I don't even want to start. Don't get me started.
We'll have to do it on a non-recorded call. You and I will just
Yeah,
goof for a
please,
half an hour.
non-live. Let's not do it live.
I won't subject you to that. Well, Maka, this has been absolutely wonderful. How can folks keep the conversation going with you if they want to reach out?
For sure, they can find me on LinkedIn. My name, Macarena Balague. I don't know if you can share that the link in the chat or with folks. And I'm happy to chat. I'm happy to support them in case they're looking for advice, to interview, or to grow in global context. Feel free to reach out. I'll be around.
Awesome. Because we have an extra minute or two here,
Okay.
do you have any final tips or anything we didn't touch on that you would really like the listeners to take away today?
Yes. I mean, just to summarize everything that we talked about today, I would say be clear and concise. in case you don't feel confident. So sometimes less is more, or just answering yes to a question, it doesn't mean that you answered the wrong way. It just means that you gave a short answer. That is better than not answering at all, or maybe challenging yourself to go to use language that or structures that you don't fully understand. So try to be concise and to the point. Learn active listening. So just listening to others can also help you to learn about English skills and also about how to respond culturally, and seek feedback on your communication. You know, after meetings or after presentations, ask for feedback on how well your message was understood. And if you have the chance, you know, some companies have employee resource groups or LinkedIn groups or colleagues that are Latinx as well. Seek for mentorship, seek for allies that understand your experience, your culture, and the global work environment, and they can offer valuable advice on how to navigate potential cultural challenges.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maca. This has absolutely been a delight. I look forward to our comedy session together. And thank you for making the time.
Thank you, Hunter. It's been a pleasure, and see you next time. Bye bye.
See you next time.